I've got my client back here. You're back in, Your Honor.
Okay, Shannon, you can put us back on the record, please.
Okay.
All right, we're back on the record. First issue we need to address on the record is the waiver of a conflict. Mr. Lugerai?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Sylvius, one of the issues that's arisen in this case is the criminal case that you had in 2015. You were represented by Michael Fallahy of Mr. White's office. Do you recall that? Yes. And you understand, because Mr. White is in the same office as Mr. Fallahy, that there is a potential conflict of interest here for him representing your ex-wife. You understand that? Yes. And I have indicated to you that Mr. White has indicated, at least when we were in chambers, that he doesn't intend to bring up that criminal case from 2015. I told you that? Yes. And you understand that a conflict is that you have a right to waive the conflict or not waive the conflict. You understand that, right? Yes. And I've explained to you how conflicts work. Yes. And you're willing to waive the conflict and let Mr. White proceed in representing Miss Ayers. Yes. Any questions for Mr. White or the court?
None for me.
If I may, Your Honor,
Go ahead.
Mr. Lugerai is absolutely correct. There's no need to bring up any of the 2015 criminal case or any of that. It's all prior to the motion that was filed by my client. It probably wouldn't be proper to be brought up anyway, and it certainly doesn't appear to be an issue in this case today.
All right, well, I'm satisfied that whatever conflict does exist here has been properly waived on the record. So initially, I want to hear, Mr. White, from your client regarding the therapist that the child has been seeing. So, ma'am, if you could raise your right hand, please. You do swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
State your full name for the record.
Kelly, so that let us know you can hear. If you can hear, okay, Judge.
My name is Kelly Ayers.
Oh yeah, I can hear her fine.
Can you spell your last name, please?
Ayres.
Miss Ayers, you filed a motion on your own initially in early August of 2020 for a change of custody. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Since then, have you engaged the services of a counselor for your minor child?
Yes.
Did you have any discussions with Mr. Sylvius prior to doing so?
Prior to doing so, we have had a discussion about it.
When was that discussion? When was it, first of all?
It was over the summer of 2020.
Would it have been before or after you filed your motion on August 6th, if you recall?
In passing, it was before the motion that was filed.
So it was before.
Yes.
Where did this occur at?
Would have been our driveway.
Do you have in-person exchanges with Mr. Sylvius when you exchanged Kimmy? You actually saw each other?
Mr. White, I'm sorry. Shannon, she's kind of hard to hear. If you could avoid running the printer, I couldn't hear her. Could you repeat the last question and answer? And I'll try to turn the volume up a little bit.
I'll get closer.
Yeah, make sure you move a little closer.
Want to take my mask off?
I prefer you didn't.
Okay.
I'm autoimmune compromised, so it's kind of an issue for me. Where did this take place? This conversation you had?
Would have been at our driveway.
In Napoleon?
Yes.
And can you tell the court what that conversation entailed and what Mr. Sylvius' response was, if any?
Okay. He dropped her off at 6:30 in the morning, like usual, so he can go to work. And that particular day, she was upset, she was crying a lot, she was tired. And I noticed that there was a lot of emotions. And so I told Mitch, I'm just going to have her see a counselor because of things that have happened in the past, the divorce, which can affect kids, and all these emotions with ADHD that she's still learning how to manage.
How did Mr. Sylvius respond to that? You're making
He shrugged.
He shrugged his shoulders.
He shrugged his shoulders.
Is that a typical response from Mr. Sylvius when you discuss things with him?
Yes.
Did you ever have any occasion to discuss it with him before? Or after, I should say?
We did not discuss the counseling afterwards, more because his girlfriend was involved.
Now, you made this appointment. How did it normally work, or what's the history been as far as medical, dental, and the types of appointments for Kimmy? Who's been the one that's taken care of all that?
I make all medical, dental, every single appointment, all of her ADHD appointments, school appointments, everything.
So you making this therapist appointment was just another medical appointment you made for your child?
Just a normal routine.
Did you ever have any objection from Mr. Sylvius at all about this?
No.
Okay. That's all I have for now, Your Honor. Thank you.
I missed something that your client said about the reason for seeking therapy.
Oh.
She did say something about ADHD, but just before that, she said something else that I did not catch.
Okay. What was the reason that you brought this up with Mitch about getting therapy for Kimmy?
Oh, to help her understand the divorce that Mitch and I went through, to help her understand the separate homes and understanding all of that process.
Were there some issues going on that gave you concern about Kimmy's mental health?
She would always be tired. She didn't want to go with Mitch no matter how much we've tried to encourage her. And we've tried to get him involved as well, trying to make a smooth exchange every time.
Okay. That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Lujuri?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. When was the conversation in your driveway? Do you remember the date?
I do not remember the date.
And would it be fair for me to say that you and Mitch primarily communicate via text messaging?
Not primarily.
Well, how else do you communicate?
Verbally.
How often?
On Sundays during exchanges.
On Sundays during exchanges? And so that's about once a week?
Yes.
Do you guys communicate verbally any other time? Do you guys call each other on the phone since August, let's say 1st of 2020?
We do not call each other on the phone.
So you communicate sometimes at exchanges. Do you communicate every time at exchanges?
Not every time.
In the past, when it relates to doctor's appointments, that would be something that you would text to Mitch?
He's never really shown any interest in knowing about her medical.
That wasn't my question. Do you text him information about doctor's appointments?
No.
Do you never?
Sometimes.
Okay.
When I think about it, I tell him if she has a doctor's appointment.
You indicated that your daughter has ADHD. Do you text him information about the ADHD?
He should know about it.
So, yes.
That's not, once again, that's not my question. Do you text him information about that?
No.
Okay, so you claim that you don't know the day, but at some point, at some time in your driveway, you indicated to Mitch that you wanted your daughter, Kimmy, to see a therapist. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you identify the therapist?
No.
Have you ever identified the therapist to Mitch?
No.
How often does Kimmy see this therapist?
Every other week.
On what days?
Thursdays.
And those are days that the child is with you? Those are the weeks that the child is with you? Yes?
Yes.
How many times has the child seen the therapist?
How about 12?
Have you met with the therapist?
Yes.
Have you given the therapist a history?
Yes.
Is the therapist a social worker, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist? Which one?
Psychologist.
Has the therapist, have you met with the therapist one-on-one, like had your own appointment with the therapist?
No.
Has your current husband met with the therapist?
No.
Have you given the therapist Mr. Silvius's contact information?
No.
Who pays for the therapist?
Insurance.
Do you have any co-pays that you pay? Is there any out of pocket?
No.
Who gets the bills for the therapist?
My husband.
Just so we're clear, you've never indicated to Mitch that the child was seeing this particular therapist.
That is correct.
You never followed up after that conversation with Mitch where you said, I think Kimmy should see a therapist.
No.
You never told him when she was starting to see a therapist.
No.
You never told him how often she was seeing a therapist.
No.
You never gave him an update as to the progress of therapy.
No.
And the reasons why you told him that you think Kimmy should see a therapist was for management of her ADHD and processing the divorce that you guys had 6.5 years ago. Is that right?
Yes.
That's the reason you gave Mitch.
Mm-hmm.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Who takes the child to the therapist?
I do.
Do you get progress notes from the therapist?
No.
Do you talk to the therapist after appointments?
Yes, briefly.
Has the therapist expressed any concerns regarding Kimmy to you?
Yes.
Then why is this therapist here to testify?
I'm sorry, Mr. LeDrec, she said yes, that there was. I'm not sure I understand your question.
I thought she said no. Okay. So
Okay.
the therapist has expressed concerns to you.
Yes.
Okay. Do these concerns relate to Mr. Silvius?
Yes.
Have you discussed those concerns with Mr. Silvius?
Yes.
What have you discussed with him?
His drinking. He drinks alcohol often.
Okay. Are you at his house when he's drinking alcohol?
No.
You haven't seen him drinking alcohol, not in the last several months. Is that a fair statement on my part?
That's correct.
So you have really no foundation from your own personal knowledge as to how much he drinks or doesn't drink. Is that correct?
Correct.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for Ms. Ayers. I would like to examine my client about this therapist.
Certainly. Any redirect, Mr. White?
Not at this, no, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Silvius, would you raise your right hand, please? You do swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes,
State your full name. You can put your hand down.
Mitchell Ryan Silvius.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Lugeri.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Silvius, you heard the testimony of Ms. Ayers.
Yes,
Do you recall, first of all, are there any text messages between you and Ms. Ayers that identify the therapist for your daughter?
no,
Are there any text messages between you and Ms. Ayers that reference the therapist in any way?
no,
She indicated that on some unidentified date that there was a conversation in her driveway about Kimmy seeing a therapist. Do you recall any such conversation?
no, I do not.
Have you ever discussed Kimmy seeing a therapist with Miss Ayers in the last, let's say, year?
No,
Has Miss Ayers ever named, other than today when I told you that the therapist's name was Alan Hauser, have you ever heard that name before?
No,
Did you know that Kimmy was seeing a therapist?
no,
Nobody ever informed you of that.
no,
Have you ever been contacted by a therapist for your input?
no,
Have you received any bills from any therapist?
no,
Have you received any consent to treatment from a therapist?
no.
Does your daughter have ADHD?
Yes, she does.
Is that being managed?
Yes, it is.
Is it being managed well?
Yes.
As it relates to other doctor's appointment, has Miss Ayers told you about those in the past?
There are times where Kim has doctor's appointments on the weeks that I have her, and Kelly does tell me when those appointments are, if they are on my weeks, and she takes care of it. I'm usually at work.
Your Honor, that's all that I have for my client. I would just like the court to know that these parties have joint legal custody, and before a child is seen by a therapist. I think that's a joint decision as to, one, should the child have therapy, and two, who that therapist should be.
Questions, Mr. White?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Silvius, it's accurate that Kelly's been always the one that has made medical and dental appointments for Kimmy. Is that correct?
Yes,
So it wouldn't be unusual that she would simply make this appointment like she makes the dental and medical appointments then, right?
this appointment is unusual because I was not told. All the other doctor's appointments I am made aware of by her. This was a complete surprise to me.
Well, we've all got hundreds of pages of text messages of those. There isn't any real reference to those. It must be that she's told you during an exchange, right?
Yes,
Just like she says she told you during an exchange about this, it's kind of been handled the same way as the medical then, right?
not sure as I understand your question.
That's okay. That's all I have, Your Honor.
So, Mr. Silvius, do you recall sometime last summer during an exchange, or maybe more than one exchange, where your daughter was particularly or unusually upset?
She has her emotional states from time to time, and generally Kelly and we handle them together well. If Kim is having an issue, if I'm having an issue with her for emotions, then I communicate with Kelly about it.
The question was there an exchange, let's say in August, where Kimmy was upset when you were dropping her off, as Miss Ayers testified? Is that what you were asking, Your Honor?
She testified that the occasion when she told Mr. Silvius that she thought their child should see a therapist happened during an exchange when the child was upset.
I have never dropped Kim off to Kelly and have Kim to be in an upset state, at least not that I have seen.
How about when she's dropped off to you?
Your Honor, I pick her up, and most of the time when I pick her up, I can't think of an instant where she was upset or manic.
So at the beginning of your week, you pick up the child?
That is correct.
And at the end of the week, her mother picks her up from your location?
No, Your Honor, I pick her up and drop her off at the mother's house.
So all of the exchanges take place there?
Correct.
Are there occasions when she doesn't want to go with you?
It has been a really long time since that's happened, but that's happened in the past, like years ago.
Did it happen at all last summer?
I can recall one instance when she wanted to stay one more day with her mom, and I did not find it to be that big of a deal. So I let her stay one more day and I picked her up the following day.
Council, any follow-up questions based upon mine?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right. It certainly sounds to me that mom very well could have said to dad she was thinking about getting the child into a therapist. It doesn't sound like she ever said, I'm definitely going to get her in to see a therapist. How do you feel about that? Do you want to be involved in picking the therapist? Clearly, no conversation like that ever occurred. But it wouldn't surprise me based on what she described. I think she should see a therapist. Dad shrugged and didn't really have a response to that. That is believable. I would have hoped that there be more conversation about a therapist when you share joint legal custody. That's a pretty significant step with a child. That there, even if there's one parent that isn't actively engaging in medical appointments or such, that's still something that parents need to discuss. Who, not, I'm thinking about it, or maybe she could benefit from it, but I found a therapist. I wanted to see this therapist. Here's who it is. That conversation needs to take place. Now, after saying that, I do see value in hearing from a therapist. I think it's only fair that Mr. Lugeri have a fair opportunity to, at a minimum, review the therapist's notes ahead of time. As far as taking the therapist's deposition, I mean, how strongly do you feel about that, Mr. Lugeri?
Not that strongly, Your Honor. I haven't seen the notes, but I'm not going to say that that's something usually I would do. I have done, but without seeing the notes, I don't know. I just want to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to doing as well as I'm supposed to be doing it, if that makes sense. So I would want to see those notes. Those may be sufficient. There have been times where I've received therapist notes, Your Honor, and their handwriting, if they're handwritten, it might as well be hieroglyphics. And then under those circumstances, I probably would want to take a deposition just to decipher their writing. But it's not something that I think I would do if the notes are otherwise legible.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you that opportunity. I'm not going to take any other testimony today, mainly because I want it to be fresh in my mind when I hear it and in the context. So what I'm going to do is adjourn for today. I'm going to find a date for you just as quickly as I can. I know you're anxious to get this resolved. And I think for the benefit of the child, I want to give this a priority. But I want to give Mr. Lugeri the opportunity to review the therapist's notes. And if after receiving the notes, he desires to depose the therapist, I want to give him that opportunity as well. Let's, I will have Dawn get with both of you to try to find a date that works. Hopefully we can get the information from the therapist promptly. Can't imagine why there should be too much delay, but I'd like to be able to resume this in no more than a month, hopefully sooner than that.
Just so the court knows, I am out of town February 13th to the 20th. I was supposed to go to Mexico, but now we're going to Florida because I didn't want to get stuck in Mexico. And then I have a trial on March 1st. So, but.
All right. I'll just have Dawn get with both of you and figure out something that works with everyone's schedule.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Nick, I will email you all the information I have or the therapist. I'll send that to you here shortly.
Yeah, and if what your client could do just to expedite this, sign a release for the therapist
Absolutely.
to my office, the entire file, not
Absolutely.
just the treatment notes, the consents to treatment, anything like that.
Absolutely. We'll
Right.
take care of that forthwith.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you.